Have you ever imagined what it would be like to have it all? To be a billionaire, living in a world where money is no object, where every desire is just a transaction away. This is the story of a man who didn't just imagine it, he lived it. But it's also the story of how he lost everything, and in doing so, found something far more valuable, his own humanity. Let's call him Alex. Not his real name, but his story is very real. Alex wasn't born into wealth. He was a scrapper, a visionary who built a tech empire from his garage. He had the Midas touch. Every venture turned to gold, and soon, he was on magazine covers, hailed as a genius. He owned skyscrapers, private jets, and yachts that looked like floating mansions. His life was a whirlwind of exclusive parties, high-stakes meetings, and a level of luxury most of us can only dream of. But this world of excess came at a cost. The higher he climbed, the more isolated he became. Friendships became transactions. Relationships were measured in what they could offer him. He saw people not as individuals, but as assets or liabilities on his personal balance sheet. His family tried to reach him, to pull him back from the brink, but their voices were drowned out by the roar of his success. He was living in a gilded cage, surrounded by opulence, but starved of genuine connection. The man in the mirror was a stranger, his eyes reflecting not joy, but a hollow, insatiable hunger for more. Then the fall. It wasn't a single event, but a cascade of failures. A series of risky investments, a market crash, and a betrayal by his closest advisor. It was a perfect storm that tore through his empire like a hurricane. One day he was a billionaire, and the next, he was facing bankruptcy. The headlines that once praised him now mocked him. The friends who once flocked to him vanished overnight. The phone stopped ringing. The silence was deafening. He lost the penthouse, the cars, the jet. He lost it all, stripped of his wealth and status. Alex found himself on the streets, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a few dollars in his pocket. For the first time in decades, he was invisible. People walked past him, their eyes averted, just as he had once walked past the less fortunate. The man who once commanded boardrooms was now just another face in the crowd of the forgotten. The first few weeks were a brutal lesson in survival. He felt hunger, a real, gnawing emptiness he'd never known. He felt the biting cold of the night, a physical discomfort his climate-controlled world had always shielded him from. He felt fear, a raw, primal fear of the unknown. He was no longer a titan of industry. He was just a man, vulnerable and alone. He spent his nights in homeless shelters, listening to the stories of others who had fallen on hard times. And that's where the change began. In the shelter, he met a woman named Maria, a volunteer who served soup with a smile that reached her eyes. She didn't know who he was, or who he had been. She just saw a man in need. She treated him with kindness, with dignity. She listened to his story without judgment. For the first time in years, someone saw him, the real him, buried beneath the rubble of his former life. Slowly, Alex started to see the world through new eyes. He saw the quiet courage of a man who shared his meager meal. He saw the resilience of a single mother fighting to give her kids a better life. He saw the simple, profound power of a shared laugh over a cup of hot coffee. These were the things his money could never buy. This was the richness he had been missing all along. He started helping out at the shelter, mopping floors, serving food, talking to people. He learned their names, their histories, their dreams. He discovered an empathy he never knew he possessed. He was connecting with people on a fundamental, human level. He wasn't giving them money. He was giving them his time, his attention, his heart. And in return, he was receiving something priceless, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. One day, an old business acquaintance saw him on the street. Shocked, the man offered him a loan, a chance to get back on his feet. The old Alex would have seized the opportunity, plotting his triumphant return to the top, ready to rebuild his empire bigger and better than before. But this was a new Alex. He accepted the help, but not to reclaim his throne. He used the money to start a small foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping the homeless community that had become his family. He wasn't building another corporation. He was building a community. He used his business acumen not to generate profit, but to create sustainable programs for housing, job training, and mental health support. His new office wasn't a corner suite with a skyline view. It was a small, rented space above a soup kitchen. His team wasn't a group of high-powered executives. It was a dedicated band of volunteers and social workers. His wealth was no longer measured in dollars, but in the number of lives he could touch, the amount of hope he could inspire. Alex's story isn't about the tragedy of losing a fortune. It's about the triumph of finding oneself. It's a powerful reminder that our true worth isn't in what we have, but in who we are. It's in our capacity for kindness, our ability to connect, and our willingness to help others. He had to become a beggar to learn how to be truly rich. He had to lose his entire world to finally find his place in it, to find his way back to humanity. His journey shows us that sometimes the greatest falls are the very things that teach us how to fly. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story, please consider sharing it. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that explores the deeper side of life. See you next time.